On March 5, 2018, Marc-André Leclerc and Ryan Johnson finally reached the summit of the Mendenhall Towers. Climbing this mountain's peak was something Johnson had already done plenty of times before. However, this moment was special. They successfully climbed the north face of the Mendenhall Towers, something nobody had ever done before. To commemorate this moment, Ryan Johnson took a panoramic video of the scenery, with Leclerc only a few feet away from him. They were ecstatic. Who wouldn't be? They did what only a few people in the world could. Johnson's smile radiated as bright as the sun. But little did they know that this would be the last video they would ever take. Alaska's Mendenhall Towers are as beautiful as they are dangerous for those who dare to climb them. The beauty of the tower's peak is unparalleled. Reaching this peak serves as a sense of accomplishment and success. Climbing duo Ryan Johnson and Marc-André Leclerc journeyed to see and feel its beauty, and they experienced it in a way that nobody had ever done at that point. Unfortunately, the majestic mountain would claim these brave souls. The Mendenhall Towers of Alaska is a ridge of 7 granite peaks found within the mountain range of the Coast Mountains. The mountain stands at 6,910 feet, or 2,106 meters. The first to reach its south peak were John Svensson and Mike Clark. Its name was given back in 1964 by researchers under the Juneau Icefield Research Project, based on a nearby glacier, the Mendenhall Glacier. The Mendenhall Glacier is special, known for being the only glacier in Alaska you can reach using only the road. The mountain offers several routes, which make the mountain ideal for climbers. People climb it regularly. But what Leclerc and Johnson dared to accomplish was reach the summit through the north face, something nobody has ever done before. Marc-André Leclerc was dubbed as the best alpinist of his generation. Leclerc was born in Fraser Valley, found in the outskirts of Vancouver, British Columbia. His hometown was littered with mountains, and he lived under the gaze of the mightiest mountain in his area, Mount Cheam. Growing up in the shadows of these peaks, Mark was inspired to take up adventurous hobbies like climbing and hiking, even at such a young age. A big factor in the shaping of his passion was a classic that he used to read, Quest for Adventure, by Chris Bennington. The first time that Mark got the taste of climbing was when he was 9 years old. His mother showed him a climbing wall in a local mall, and he was hooked. He quickly started indoor climbing and joined the Project Climbing Gym in Abbotsford. Leclerc improved so fast that he was already decimating sport climbing competitions by the time he was a teenager. The indoor scene was not enough to satisfy Mark's desire for action. By the time he was 13, he would go to the local mountains with loved ones. Without formal training or equipment, Leclerc would go by bike to climb 8K-foot walls within his area. In 2008, when he was only 15, Mark would start exploring out of his area, frequenting Squamish. He also went to the Core Mountains, the highest peak in British Columbia. He tried climbing that 9,500-foot peak of the Siva Mountain. Even though his effort was unsuccessful, it made his burning passion for climbing shine brighter. During the next 2 years, Leclerc would practice his rock and ice climbing skills by frequenting Squamish. During that time, he also ascended one of the biggest and baddest peaks in Canada, Mount Sless, after 2 attempts. Normally, it would be harder to work with climbs like these because one would have to do lots of traveling and preparation. However, Mark got the upper hand because it was near his area. This climb was his first alpine accomplishment. After graduating, he moved to Squamish to train and climb full-time. This decision is what enabled him to pursue his dreams. Mark lived a full-on climber life, balancing his job as a surf coach and bivvying in the Grand Wall boulders. Out of all the residents of Squamish, Mark was the most eager and dedicated to climbing. At this moment in time, Mark was already being eyed by the sports climbing scene. He received an offer to be sponsored by Outdoor Research, which was succeeded by Westcomb. Down the road, he was also assisted by SMM, Maxime, Ropes, and La Sportiva. By 2013, when Leclerc was 20, he soloed 2 difficult routes in only a single day. Those routes were difficult because of how long they were. Shortly after that, he also proceeded to solo 3 of some of the most vicious climbs in the area. With these accomplishments, the eyes of the public started to be directed towards him. Something that not much of the public knew at the time was Mark's passion for climbing a specific aid line along the north walls of the Stalmas Chief Mountain Peak. The specific path that Mark took was called the Temptation of St. Anthony, and it is one of the most challenging climbs on the Chief. And by 2013, Leclerc was able to master it. Marc-André made several commendable climbs during his young adulthood in his late teens and early 20s. During this time, he would break Alex Honnold's speed record by clocking in a 57-minute solo climb on the 1,000-foot Grand Wall. Leclerc, with Tom Livingstone as a partner, was also the first to ascend the Navigator Wall in wintertime. At the beginning of 2014, Marc traveled to South America. There, he would be acquainted with the Andes Mountains. January of that year, he assembled a team of excellent climbers, which included Will Stanhope and Paul McSorley. Will Stanhope will later be known as one of North America's best lead climbers. Paul McSorley, on the other hand, would pocket many first ascents in his portfolio. Together, this team conquered a humongous wall in Patagonia's Cerro Mariposa. For a separate expedition, he would also form a team with Jason Kruk. Jason Kruk would be depicted in documentaries and gain controversy for destroying a climb called the Compressor Route by chopping off 125 bolts off of the wall. Together with Kruk, Marc would perform his first climbs in Torres Valley. Torres Valley is known to house some of Earth's most technical and strategic peaks. In the latter part of 2014, Leclerc would expand his achievements even more by topping off his already impressive SLES effort. He conquered 3 peaks in a single day on his own, while his girlfriend, Brett, followed a different path to climb the same peak. Brett Harrington would make a name for herself, garnering a following on her social media and accomplishing her own first ascents, some with her boyfriend. She would also later be awarded as one of the world's leading alpine climbers, and her routes would gain prizes. From then on, Leclerc and Harrington would always be together, whether it was life on or off the mountains. The both of them finished off their already strong year with a banger. They traveled into the depths of the Waddington Range, aiming to climb British Columbia's highest peaks. Marc set his sights on 2 peaks and soloed them: Mount Asperity and Serra 5. Both of these climbers were well over 12,000 feet. Many consider Serra 5 as the hardest peak in all of British Columbia. At this point, Leclerc was sponsored by the Arc'teryx and was a part of their Rising Star roster. 2015 was Marc-André's year. He accomplished even more outstanding feats and has risen to the ranks of the climbing community's cream of the crop. He began his year by doing an ascent that nobody had ever dared to try before, a winter ascent on the northeast buttress of SLES in British Columbia, all on his own. At this point in his life, this peak was already familiar territory to Leclerc. Later that year, Marc-André ascended Cerro Torre, which lay on the border of Chile and Argentina in Patagonia. He also paired up with Colin Haley to do the first traverse of the Torre in reverse. At the same time, Leclerc was also the first to climb the north face of Cerro Torre. All of these were amazing feats, but Marc still hasn't had enough with his corkscrew climb. This climb was already considered by enthusiasts to be the boldest climb of the area. One by one, Marc climbed what remained of the Torres, including the Aguja Stanhart, in which he accomplished its second solo ever recorded. By 2016, Leclerc set his sights on his home turf. This time, he wanted to set records in the Canadian Rockies. His first peak was Mount Robson. He used a route called the Infinite Patience on the Emperor face of the mountain. With little time to descend, Marc had to sleep with only a rope to hold on to. By 2018, Marc-André Leclerc teamed up with Ryan Johnson to conquer the north face of the Mendenhall Towers. This was the first ascent attempt to pioneer a new route to the summit of one of the most beautiful mountains in Alaska. Enter Ryan Johnson. Ryan Johnson was Leclerc's climbing partner for the Mendenhall Tower North Face first ascent. Growing up climbing in Juneau, Alaska, Johnson was exposed to many mountains which he could climb. At a young age, he would already trek the Mendenhall Glacier and climb boulders that he could find. After graduating high school, Johnson traveled to several famous climbs, like Yosemite and the Canadian Rockies. He also journeyed to the Southwest and the Cascades. Climbing and traveling gave him a skill set that would prove to be crucial in climbing Alaskan ranges and the Himalayas. In 2005, Johnson and Stefan Ricci ascended the Cassin Ridge in Denali National Park in Alaska with only a strikingly fast 51 hours. Their total round-trip time from camp to camp was 84 hours. In the same year, he would also find himself almost reaching one of Nepal's summits, the Pumori. Johnson also journeyed to Kyrgyzstan's Kizil Asker. Johnson returned to his hometown, Juneau, Alaska, after his college graduation from the University of Montana. Rainfall is usually measured in inches, but in Juneau, it is measured in feet. This alone would make other climbers dismiss Johnson's hometown. Instead of finding other prospects, Ryan took this as a challenge and built a tight-knit community of climbers. To this day, this feat was one of the biggest factors in the creation of more routes around Juneau. Johnson would be known for being instrumental in the creation of the routes such as Tide Line and Bath Time with a toaster. Ryan Johnson became known for his extensive knowledge and experience climbing the coast mountains and the ice field of his hometown. For people outside of his hometown, he became known as the local climbing expert. Unlike Leclerc, Johnson wasn't as well known internationally. However, climbing enthusiasts would vouch for the climber. People often said that there was no doubt Leclerc acknowledged Ryan's skill. Ryan was known for valuing people's accomplishments. He didn't see each person's climb equally. He understood that each climb was a different challenge for each person. For example, he would be ecstatic about the first Alaskan summit of a team of young climbers. To others, it would be no ordinary feat, but Johnson understood that this was monumental for the new generation of climbing. Johnson's interest wasn't limited to just climbing. Ryan has been selling tours for years, and at some point, he decided to plan for a CrossFit gym. Years later, Tongass CrossFit would be born. It wasn't the fastest of businesses, but Johnson got different certificates and developed a loyal following. As mentioned before, he didn't care about what his members' accomplishments were. To him, what was important was they were always pushing for their best. He also made the most out of the gym, slowly honing his body to become an alpine conqueror. Despite all of his accomplishments, none would compare to his greatest, his son Milo. Ryan's routine climbs and trips were replaced with bonding activities with his son, although they would still go for toddler hikes. His routine pictures of climbs he just finished were replaced with photographs of his son. By 2018, Johnson's life was changing drastically. He developed his family to be closer than ever, and he was also becoming a better technical Alpesian climber. This was the result of all of his efforts and accomplishments. On March 5, 2018, after reaching the summit, the two shot videos to send to loved ones where they could be seen happy, overjoyed, calm, and at peace. At the peak of the tower, Johnson's face showed him in the most peaceful state his friends had ever seen. He was composed and full of confidence. After a while, Johnson and Leclerc finally started heading down the East Ridge, where they would rappel to the fourth tower. It was good weather at the time they shot the video, but that suddenly changed. Reports showed that as they were descending, the atmosphere suddenly started rebelling against the two, in which their lives were lost. After the climbers missed a check-in call, the authorities were alerted. Their bodies disappeared and were never found. The search and rescue teams found the remains of their rope at the bottom of the climb. This led people to speculate that the two might have been struck by something like a rock. They could also have been hit by an avalanche or a snowstorm. Despite the efforts of local authorities, friends, and the climbing community, the bodies of the two were never found. A truly tragic ending to these mountain adventurers, but surely they passed away, doing what made them feel most alive. Every year, many lives are lost in the mountains, yet people continue conquering these stony and snowy heights. Why? It's because of the desire to be free and the desire to be known. The bravery it takes to make such feats will always be honored and remembered. People will never forget the feats of the people who succeeded in proving that humans are capable of so much more than just daily living. Humans can adapt. They can climb mountains thousands of feet high. We can endure the coldest snowstorms and traverse kilometers and miles of terrain. Overcoming human limits will never be seen as a waste of time, for these people will forever serve as an inspiration to the rest of the world, that they too are capable of doing more than they think they can. Ryan Johnson and Marc-André Leclerc were brilliant climbers, but most of all, they were an inspiration. Their time here on Earth has served as an inspiration to do better and to beat the human limits. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this.